Claire Summers, David Miller, and Eric Collins were bound by love, betrayal, and deadly jealousy, a tangled triangle that would turn their quiet lives into a nightmare no one could have imagined. Claire. Summers had always seemed like the kind of woman who had everything figured out. Her work as a nurse brought comfort to countless people, and her warm, genuine smile made her beloved by patients and neighbors alike. At 28, she was living in a neat, tidy house with her longtime boyfriend, David Miller, a reliable, honest mechanic whose strong work ethic had earned him a solid reputation in Willow Ridge. They had been sweethearts since high school, growing together over the years, weathering life's ups and downs side by side. On weekends, they often went to the local diner for breakfast, laughing over steaming mugs of coffee. They dreamed of getting married one day and starting a family, building a future as steady and reassuring as the town itself. David was a good man, never quick to anger, always patient with Claire's busy schedule and her stressful shifts at the hospital. He worked long hours himself, saving money for a down payment on a larger home. Though their schedules didn't always match up, there was a sense of trust between them, an unspoken promise that they were each other's home. To everyone in Willow Ridge, they were the perfect couple, solid, predictable, loyal. People admired them and even envied them, certain their love would last forever. Their house reflected the life they had built together. Framed photographs of vacations, family gatherings, and their high school prom decorated the living room. The kitchen smelled of Claire's cooking on Sundays, where she'd experiment with new recipes while David teased her about her messy habits. The couple had a routine that felt comforting, stable, and reassuring. There was no hint of anything wrong, no whisper of trouble on the horizon. But beneath that calm surface, a quiet ache had started to grow inside Claire. As David took on extra work to boost their savings, she often found herself alone, coming home to an empty house, waiting for him to return. Even the dog seemed to notice the change, curling up by the door every night until David came back. Claire tried to fill the lonely hours with hobbies or phone calls to friends, but the silence pressed in on her. She missed the days when they would stay up late talking or plan spontaneous trips together. Life had become a schedule of routines. With little space left for romance, Claire told herself it was normal, just part of being an adult. She reasoned that sacrifices were necessary to build a future. A part of her couldn't help feeling she was slowly disappearing, becoming nothing. More than a caregiver to her patients, to David, to everyone but herself. That unspoken emptiness grew quietly, day after day. While David remained focused on his plans, never noticing how distant Claire was becoming, the cracks in their picture-perfect love were nearly invisible to the outside world. But they were. There, hiding beneath Claire's practiced smiles and David's reassuring calm. As Willow Ridge moved through its peaceful routines, no one suspected the seeds of something dangerous were already taking root in Claire's heart, ready to bloom. The moment the right temptation crossed her path, Eric Collins moved into the house next door on a warm afternoon that felt perfectly ordinary. From the moment he stepped out of his sleek black car, people noticed him. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, dressed sharply, flashing a charming grin to anyone who glanced his way. It wasn't long before neighbors gathered on their porches to satisfy their curiosity, watching as he unloaded stylish furniture and boxes marked with big city labels. Eric was new, mysterious, and impossibly confident. Everything that seemed to stand out in the calm, predictable rhythm of Willow Ridge. Claire met Eric by chance, walking her dog past his yard just days after he moved in. He was working on his flower beds, shirt sleeves rolled up, and offered a warm greeting that immediately pulled Claire in. There was a kind of energy about him, a magnetic pull she couldn't name. Their first conversation was polite and casual, filled with introductions and small talk about the neighborhood. But the way Eric looked at her, eyes sharp and attentive, made Claire feel seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. It started innocently. Claire would wave to Eric on her way to work, sometimes stop to talk if David was running late. Eric always seemed to have time for her, never distracted, asking thoughtful questions about her life. When she talked about nursing, he listened with a fascination David hadn't shown in years. Eric complimented her dedication, praised her compassion, and slowly built a sense of admiration that Claire found addictive. She knew she should keep her distance, but being around Eric lit up a spark that had been fading for months. As days turned into weeks, those fence-side chats grew deeper. Eric shared stories about his work, hinted at a glamorous past in another. Sidian made Claire laugh with his clever jokes. His confidence was thrilling, a contrast to David's quiet, predictable ways. Each time Claire felt guilt for enjoying Eric's company, he would flash that easy smile and remind her how incredible she was, how lucky anyone would be to have her. It was dangerous, and she knew it, but the pull was too strong. One afternoon, when David was working late, Eric invited Claire over to see his newly decorated living room. She agreed, telling herself it was harmless. The conversation that night turned more intimate, with Eric leaning in closer, lowering his voice, speaking to her in a way that made her forget the rest of the world. For a moment, Claire let herself fall into the feeling, ignoring every moral alarm ringing in her mind. She left that night shaken, torn between a loyal love she had trusted for years and the forbidden excitement Eric offered. What Claire didn't see was how Eric watched her leave, eyes cold and calculating the moment her back was turned. This was more than a casual flirtation. It was a challenge, a game he intended to win. As Claire stepped back into her tidy house, believing she could still control her emotions, the stage was already set for a dangerous spiral she could never have imagined. David Miller had always trusted Claire. Their relationship had survived so many years, so many challenges, that he never doubted her loyalty. But lately, something inside him had shifted. At first, it was just a faint unease he couldn't explain. Claire seemed distracted, answering him with half a smile while staring into the distance. Her phone was always close by, notifications silenced, her conversations growing shorter. David tried to push the worries aside, blaming stress, long shifts, or the burden of saving for their future. But the doubt refused to die. Soon, David began noticing other details that twisted his stomach with dread. Claire's perfume seemed stronger on some days, like she'd refreshed it before going out. She started dressing a little differently, paying extra attention to her hair and makeup, even when she claimed she was just running errands. Worst of all, she seemed to shrink away from him at night, offering excuses for being too tired or busy whenever he tried to get close. It all finally broke one evening when David drove home early from the garage, hoping to surprise Claire with dinner. Instead, he saw her through the living room window, laughing with Eric Collins next door. There was something in her expression that David hadn't seen in months, a glow. A sense of excitement she used to share only with him. That image burned into his mind, destroying any final trace of denial. The betrayal was real. He stayed quiet, refusing to storm in and confront them. Instead, he let the anger and heartbreak harden inside him. David had always been calm, even-tempered, but that same steadiness now turned into a cold, careful focus. He started paying attention to every move Claire made, every moment she stepped outside, every time she texted late at night. He watched, waited, gathered small clues until the evidence felt undeniable. Unable to hold back any longer, David confronted Claire at home a few days later. Her denial came quickly, too quickly, and her eyes darted away before she could finish her excuses. David saw the truth even before she admitted it. Claire tried to say she still loved him, but the words felt hollow, poisoned by the images replaying in David's mind. After that conversation, something inside him broke. Instead of walking away, David's heartbreak took a darker path. He began plotting ways to force Eric out of Claire's life, leaving anonymous warnings and sinister messages. Eric, arrogant and unafraid, ignored every threat. His defiance only deepened David's obsession, fueling a dangerous determination to protect what he believed was still his. David's thoughts became consumed by revenge, unable to accept that someone else could steal Claire's heart. Late at night, he would lie awake replaying their memories, wondering where everything had gone wrong and how a stranger had ruined the life he built. But as his grief twisted into rage, David refused to let go. He had already decided, if he couldn't have Claire, then no one would. And in the shadows of Willow Ridge, that promise would soon turn deadly. David's heartbreak turned into a storm he could no longer hold back. The more he thought about Claire and Eric together, the more it burned inside him. Every memory he had built with Claire felt poisoned, replaced by images of her laughing with another man. Nights became endless, David lying awake in their shared bed while Claire claimed she had late shifts or errands, always slipping away. Resentment dug its claws deeper every single day, transforming David from a heartbroken partner into something far more dangerous, driven by a desperate obsession. David decided to find out every detail of Eric's life, started following Eric. After work, keeping a notebook where he recorded license plate numbers, addresses, and daily habits. He learned where Eric shopped, what time he left for work, when he went for a run. It was like a twisted ritual, and with each new discovery, David felt a strange sense of power. If he knew everything, maybe he could control the damage. Maybe he could fix what was broken. But Eric had no intention of letting go of Claire. His arrogant confidence only fueled David's rage. David tried to scare him, leaving anonymous notes under Eric's windshield and even scrawling threats on his back door late one night. But Eric brushed it off, convinced no one could stop him from winning Claire. To him, the affair was a victory, a prize he felt entitled to claim. David saw that smug grin one afternoon as Eric waved across the fence and felt something inside him snapped completely. Determined to end it for good, David decided he would confront them both together. He tracked Claire's messages, saw them arrange a secret meeting at a rundown motel on the outskirts of town, a place so cheap no one would ask questions. David waited, watching their texts come through, confirming the time and room number. He could barely breathe as he drove across town, his hands locked around the steering wheel, a knife hidden inside his jacket pocket. Rain began to fall, blurring the neon sign of the motel as he pulled into the parking lot. He sat in the car for a moment, staring at his own reflection in the rearview mirror. It was like looking at a stranger, eyes wild, face hollow, nothing left of the man who had once dreamed of a simple, happy family. His thoughts were no longer about love, but about punishment, about making them pay for destroying everything. Inside the motel, Claire and Eric believed they were safe, lost in the thrill of stolen moments, not realizing the storm waiting just outside their door. David moved down the narrow hallway with mechanical calm, heart hammering inside his chest, each step echoing with a promise of violence. The decision was already made. If he couldn't keep Claire, no one would. Nothing else mattered, not prison, not guilt, not consequences. All that remained was a single mission to end their betrayal once and for all. David pushed open the motel door with a force that rattled the cheap frame, stepping into the stale-smelling room where Claire and Eric froze in shock. In that single instant, all three lives collided, and there was no turning back. The sight of Claire sitting close to Eric was a blade to David's heart, slicing away any final pieces of reason or restraint. He stepped forward, hand gripping, the knife hidden in his pocket, his mind filled with images of betrayal that refused to let him breathe. Claire's eyes widened, terror flooding her face as she realized what David intended. Eric jumped to his feet, but David lunged before he could react. Rage took control, a wave of raw fury that blurred David's vision and deafened him to everything else. He drove the blade forward, striking Eric with a force that ended the fight. Before it even began, Eric crumpled to the floor, blood spreading across the cheap carpet in a dark, unstoppable stain. Claire screamed, her voice breaking, trying to pull David away, but the look on his face was unrecognizable. He stood over Eric's lifeless body, breathing hard, the knife still clutched in his shaking hand. For a moment the room was silent, except for the hum of a flickering fluorescent bulb. A surreal, nightmarish calm that made Claire feel like she might faint. David turned to her, wild eyes softening into something twisted and broken. It was as if he wanted her to understand, to see this as a way to save what they had. But Claire could only stare in horror, tears streaming down her face as she backed away. The love she once felt was gone, replaced by raw, overpowering fear. Realizing what he had done, David dropped the knife and stumbled backward, as though waking from a terrible dream. Claire, trembling and gasping for air, grabbed her phone and dialed for help. The call felt endless, her hands slick with sweat, her voice barely able to form words. Sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder, bringing a final sense of reality crashing down. David fled before police arrived, running into the night, drenched by the cold rain. He hid for 2 days in a storage unit on the other side of town, haunted by what he had done, replaying that moment over and over in his mind. When officers finally found him, David was too exhausted to resist. His clothes were filthy, his eyes empty, his soul already lost. Willow Ridge was shaken to its core. The perfect couple had become a tragedy, a cautionary tale whispered about in hushed voices. Neighbors struggled to understand how love could turn so poisonous, how betrayal and obsession could destroy 3 lives in a single moment. The motel where Eric died was boarded up, left to rot as a silent monument to everything that had gone wrong. Claire moved away soon after, unable to bear the memories. And David, locked behind bars, was left alone with nothing but the endless echo of his own mistakes. A chilling reminder that love twisted by jealousy can become a kind of hell no one escapes.